My family forced me to give my college savings to my sister because she needs a prestigious school. I secretly applied for a scholarship to study abroad, and 10 years later I returned as the lead investor in their failing company. 3 years. That's how long it took to build a number big enough to feel like freedom. I stacked it one shift at a time, opening the cafe at 5:30 a.m., tutoring on weekends, stocking a discount store at night when the aisles belonged to fluorescent lights, and my thoughts. Every paycheck got sliced into labeled envelopes: tuition, books, emergency, surprise, because I'd learned early that life likes to trip you right at the finish line. I watched the total grow with the reverence some people reserve for altars. By the time I turned 18, the tally read $38,740. Enough to make Ridgeview State not just a dream, but a plan. When the acceptance email hit my inbox at 2:14 p.m. on a Tuesday, I printed 2 copies and slid them into a blue folder. I practiced telling my parents in the bathroom mirror. Calm voice, steady hands, no apologies for wanting a future I'd paid for. That night, my father was already at the head of the dining table, elbows dug in like stakes. My mother wore her weave-decided face, the one she saves for holidays and ultimatums. Serena's been accepted to Halstead College, my father said, pushing a glossy packet toward me. It's prestigious. The aid package is insufficient. My fingers tightened on the blue folder in my lap. I got into Ridgeview, I said. I have the tuition. That, he cut in, is what we wanted to discuss. We need you to transfer your savings so Serena can secure housing and initial tuition. She needs to focus on school, not money. The room's oxygen thinned. It's my money. My mother's eyes glossed with weaponized sorrow. Family sacrifices for family. I tried to laugh, and it came out as a crack. Do we sacrifice Serena's clothes budget too? Ava, my father said, voice flattening the air. This is decided. Aunt Linda arrived like she had a siren installed in her cardigan. Sweetheart, Serena is fragile. You're strong. You'll land on your feet. Strength isn't the absence of pain. It's the willingness to carry it alone. I missed Ridgeview's enrollment deadline the next morning because life has exquisite timing. That night, in a room that suddenly didn't feel like mine, I opened my banking app and wired $38,740 to my parents' joint account. The confirmation screen glowed like a polite betrayal. I didn't scream. I didn't plead. I made 2 vows with the phone's light on my face. I will never ask them for another $1. And I will never let them decide my life again. I slid the blue folder to the bottom of a drawer and bought a one-way bus ticket to a city where nobody loved my sister. Before we go any further, you should know what kind of house taught me to keep receipts. At Serena's 16th, a powder blue car sat in the driveway wearing a bow big enough to count as a guest. At my 16th, I unwrapped a stack of books and a sentence, "You always loved reading, Ava." In our home, there was a phrase that walked through rooms like a monarch. Your sister is the future of this family. Serena's average report cards were framed. My trophies lived in a grocery bag under my bed because the walls shouldn't look boastful. That's the soil my choices grew in. So when I left, I didn't run. I replanted. I built a spreadsheet of weird scholarships no one brags about. I wrote essays about resilience until the words stopped sounding inspirational and started sounding like manual labor. A small university in Rotterdam emailed, partial scholarship awarded, enough to make the math possible if I worked and slept like a roomer. Morning barista by a canal that played jazz too loud. Afternoon library assistant shelving other people's beginnings. Night cleaning crew at a co-working space where whiteboards held strangers. IPO dreams. I tracked every euro in a document called Make It Work and learned that austerity is a language you can become fluent in if the alternative is silence. Home wrote occasionally, but the subject lines translated to demands. Family update. How much more will you give up? Are you coming home for the holidays? We expect your time and apology. Serena's feed sparkled. Her grades did not. Halstead didn't suit her learning style. Relatives said. The euphemism of people who can't bear the word failed. The pivot that changed my life came from Adrian Whitaker, the CFO of a multinational logistics firm who drank espresso like a threat and never misused a semicolon. He'd been a regular at the cafe for months, the kind of customer who tips by saying good. One foggy morning, I noticed him frowning at a spreadsheet open on his laptop. Numbers were my one true language. I could read the pain in the columns. Your left joints are eating your margin, I said, then froze because sometimes my inside voice has weak arms and drops the filter. He looked up. Pardon? I blushed so hard the steam wand should have cried. I mean, you're double counting returns in your aggregation. If you separate refunds and chargebacks, your month-over-month delta will stop lying. He stared at me for a full beat. Then he tilted the screen. Show me. I slid into the seat like it was a final exam and my soul had paid the fee. I rewired the pivot table, isolated the wolf in the flock, and the spreadsheet exhaled. Adrian studied me the way you study a safe you'd like to open. What do you do, miss? Ava. What do you do, Ava? Make coffee. Shelve books. Vacuum dreams. He smiled, small and rare. And when you're not doing those things? Studying. Finance. He nodded, closed his laptop, and left a business card on the table. If you're serious about that last word, come by on Thursday. I'll spare you the coffee machine and give you a different kind of grinder. Thursday, I walked into a different universe. White walls, glass doors, a receptionist whose voice sounded like a calendar invitation. Adrian put me through a mini case on working capital and inventory turns. I sweated through my jacket and killed it anyway. He offered me a temporary analyst assistant slot, 10 hours a week, and a small personal loan to bridge my next semester's tuition with a repayment plan that behaved like mercy. Consider it an investment, he said. Your interest rate is an introduction to risk. Adrian became my mentor in the way that's half deliberate and half weather. He spoke in aphorisms that had been filed down by time. Cash flow is oxygen. Sunk costs are the devil's lullaby. Counterparty risk is just people risk wearing a tie. I slept less, I learned more. I bought a suit from a secondhand shop and tailored the sleeves myself with a YouTube tutorial and a prayer. The day I graduated, I stood alone on a bridge and watched the water carry a flotilla of paper boats someone had launched. A seagull eyed me like a skeptic. I'm coming, I told the life I wanted. Wait for me or don't. My first full-time job was at a mid-market advisory firm where the coffee was terrible and the senior analysts were worse. I learned the difference between a bad boss and a battlefield. One hurts you. The other helps you learn where to duck. I took the CFA exams like they owed me money. I failed level 2 once. I passed it the second time with a score that made the proctors nod imperceptibly at my Scantron. I took night classes toward an MBA that emphasized value creation instead of PowerPoint creation. I built an emergency fund until it stopped being fragile. I started investing small amounts with a discipline that looked boring from the outside. I went to meetups where money people assemble under the banner of jargon, angels and seed rounds and bridges that no one crosses without a fee. I found my community, boring-looking killers who believe in cash conversion cycles and laugh at EBITDA jokes. That's where I met Priya Kapoor, who had a gift for slicing through narratives with numbers. If a chart lied, she could hear it hiss. She became my colleague, my friend, and the person who texts back, "Send the model," at 2 a.m. without judgment. Around year 9, my phone buzzed with an email that started the way bad weather starts, harmlessly. It was from my mother, forwarded from my father, CC'd to Aunt Linda, and BCC'd to a cousin. I could tell by the tone. Subject line, family business update, urgent. I read it twice and then went for a walk, because stillness amplifies panic. The gist, Hart Packaging, the regional industrial packaging company my father had inherited from his father, was in trouble. A lot of trouble. Accounts payable stretched like a rubber band about to become a weapon. Accounts receivable were a graveyard where invoices went to remember being alive. Debt covenants were getting nervous. The line of credit was a line only on paper. Serena, who had drifted through jobs like a breeze through an open door, had recently been installed as Vice President of Brand and Innovation, a title so airy you could see through it. She had greenlit 3 strategic projects: a boutique subscription box division for businesses that don't need subscription boxes, an influencer partnership for a product with nothing to influence, and a rebranding initiative that produced a logo that looked like a banana glued to a hexagon. Total spend, 6 figures, and the patience of several vendors. My mother's email ended with, "We need you to come home and help. You've always been good with numbers." I read that sentence the way you read a joke tattooed on the back of a snake. I forwarded the email to Priya with one line, "Due diligence trip?" She replied in under a minute. "Flights or spreadsheets first?" I sent a shrug emoji and then a PDF of the last 3 years of Hart Packaging's public filings and supplier chatter scraped from the internet with the finesse of someone who has learned to find needles without touching hay. We built a model in a weekend that told us 2 stories, one bleak, one conditional. The bleak story said insolvency within a quarter if nothing changed. The conditional story said salvageable if 1, the vanity projects were cut immediately, 2, the COO slot was filled by someone with real operational spine, 3, the board grew up and took fiduciary duty seriously instead of using it as a coat hook for ego, 4, the capital stack got oxygen in the form of new equity, not more debt, and 5, the family stopped treating the company like a buffet. "Would you invest?" Priya asked. "Only if I could control the knife," I said. "No point in delicately operating if someone with a Sharpie keeps writing on the patient." We booked flights. The lobby of Hart Packaging smelled like solvent and nostalgia. The receptionist remembered me from 1,000 childhood afternoons when I sat on that very leather couch doing homework, while my dad took calls that sounded important. The ficus in the corner had outlived 2 recessions and my innocence. My father hugged me like a man hugging an asset. My mother pinched my cheeks as if I were a dumpling. Serena glided in 15 minutes later, wearing a white blazer and an expression that said she'd invented white blazers. "Ava," she sang, "you look metropolitan." "You look expensive," I said, smiling in a way that could be read multiple ways. She laughed, assuming the compliment. I asked for financials. They gave me summaries. I asked for aging reports. They gave me hope. I asked for the AP schedule. They gave me coffee. I called it out. "If you want me to help, I need to see reality, not the slide deck version." My father bristled. "We're being transparent." I slid a printed list across the table. Vendor balances by days past due, cash flow by week, inventory turns by SKU, utilization, defect rates, chargebacks, maintenance logs. This is transparency. He grumbled, but the numbers arrived. Late, sloppy, full of rounding errors and the kind of miscellaneous categories that should be illegal. The due diligence confirmed our thesis. This could be saved, but only with surgery that would offend people who confuse legacy with competence. We found a plant manager, Carmen Lee, who was essentially keeping the place alive with duct tape, Excel, and personal guilt. We found a client who was willing to double orders if OTIF, on time, in full, got back above 98%. We found morale that was low but not broken, and vendors who were furious but not litigious, yet. Priya and I drafted 2 documents. First, a term sheet for an $8.5 million equity investment through an SPV, special purpose vehicle, we set up with 2 co-investors, both of whom owed Priya favors. Second, a board restructuring plan. The conditions were non-negotiable. Replace the board of directors with an independent majority within 60 days. Remove Victor, Dad, and Serena from day-to-day operations. They could remain non-exec advisors if they behaved like adults. Hire Carmen Lai as interim COO with full operational authority and a compensation package tied to KPI improvements. Immediate end to family advances, temporary loans, and any non-ARAP payments to family members. Monthly reporting to the board and investors, cash flow waterfalls, APAR aging, rolling 13-week forecasts. Kill the subscription box, influencer campaign, and rebrand that spent money like it earned it. Retention bonuses for key operations and QC staff. Market salaries only. No backdoor perks. No company cars for anyone not in ops or sales. Dividends prohibited until debt ratios normalized and 2 consecutive profitable quarters were logged. If conditions were not met, funding would not close. We scheduled the meeting for Monday in the conference room with the long glass table where I used to pretend I was a CEO by pushing paperclips into armies. The morning of the meeting, I walked in wearing a suit that fit like certainty. Priya sat to my right, a stack of binders to her left. My father took the head of the table without being assigned it. My mother sat beside him, eyes wet, fingers knotted. Serena flounced in, late and luminous, with a latte that would die before the second agenda item. Also present, 2 other investors from our SPV, a representative from the bank whose expression could be used to curdle milk, and Carmen, who looked surprised to be invited to a room where decisions were made. I opened with the numbers because numbers have a way of making manners optional. You are 6 to 8 weeks from tripping covenants that will allow your bank to reduce the line. You are 10 to 12 weeks from payroll pressure that will show up as unexpected. You are 18 weeks from insolvency if current trends continue. My father laughed a little too loudly. We've weathered worse. Not with this debt structure, Priya said softly, clicking to a slide that displayed the interest coverage ratio in a font size that hurt feelings. I laid out the term sheet. I read each condition like a poem. At remove Victor and Serena from day-to-day operations. My mother inhaled like a window being opened in winter. You expect a father to step down from the company he built? My father said. You inherited it, I said, and watched his jaw move as if chewing a truth with gristle, and you can remain on the board in a non-executive capacity. Serena kicked back in her chair and smiled a smile designed for photos. So what I'm hearing is you want to come into our company and tell us what to do. That's adorable. Priya kept her face still. We want to save a business and the jobs it provides. That requires governance. And what do we get? Serena asked, flipping the term sheet as if it might have a prettier side. You get a functioning company, I said. And if we pull it off, you also get the option of being proud instead of pretending. My father slammed his hand on the table. You owe this family. I stood. My legs did not shake, which I consider evidence of either growth or adrenaline. Allow me to introduce the lead investor. The room looked to the 2 older men from the SPV. They remained comfortably bland. I placed a folder on the glass and slid out 3 documents. A printout of the bank transfer from 10 years ago, the emails that demanded it, and a summary of my network's capital commitments signed last Thursday at 6:12 p.m. with my name in the investor line. The lead investor, I said, meeting my father's eyes, then my mother's, then Serena's, is me. Silence is a living thing when it wants to be. It crawled along the table and looked each of them in the face. My mother's voice trembled. Where did you get that kind of money? By making different choices than the ones you made for me. I softened it because I am cruel only in proportion to the truth required. I worked. I studied. I learned to invest. I built a network. And I wrote this term sheet with people who would bet on me before they'd bet on a legacy title. Aunt Linda, who had come to support, said what she always says when she doesn't like the future. Ava, we're family. You don't do this to family. I slid the transfer confirmation closer. Family did this to me. I'm not asking you for anything that I wouldn't ask any founder whose governance is failing. My father tried to reassert the narrative. We don't need your money. We have pride. Pride doesn't make payroll, Priya said clinically. This does. Or the bank will do it their way. The bank representative cleared his throat. We are, of course, eager to see a path forward. Translation. Sign the girl's paper or we turn off the lights. I moved to the final slide, a side-by-side of two futures. Future A, no deal, covenant breach, receivership, liquidation, fire sale of assets at 40 to 60 cents on the dollar, jobs lost, legacy reduced to a footnote. Future B, deal closes, governance overhaul, operational triage, bridge to profitability in 4 to 6 quarters, equity dilution now in exchange for survival, and a chance at pride with numbers behind it. I closed my laptop. You have until end of day tomorrow. After that, we pull our offer. Blackmail, my father muttered. Terms. I corrected. Serena looked at me for a long time. It was strange and almost tender, like looking at a photograph of your own face if your life had gone differently. If we sign, she said, what happens to me? You work, I said, for someone else. You interview like everyone else does, for a job you can do, at a salary the market agrees with. You stop spending the company's money on your identity. She laughed, attempted, failed. And if I don't? Then in a month you'll be posting about resilience from an apartment full of boxes you can't unpack because you won't be able to pay rent. The meeting adjourned because we had crushed the oxygen. Decisions need air. We gave them a day. They signed. It didn't happen with smiles or absolution. It happened with pens. My father signed like it was a surrender document, which in a way it was, from ego to survival. My mother signed like she was donating her favorite sweater to charity. Serena's signature was neat and round and very sincere in the way that people are sincere when the door behind them has closed. The next months were work in the primal sense. Carmen took the COO seat and turned it into a throne carved out of reason. She killed the subscription box, euthanized the influencer fiction, and sunset the rebrand with a memo so respectful it could be taught in diplomacy schools. She renegotiated 3 supplier contracts, not because she is magic, but because she shows up prepared and pays on time. Funny how vendors become generous when you stop treating them like ATMs. We implemented 13-week rolling cash forecasts and posted them like law. We installed BI dashboards that turned lies into squiggles and then into nothing. We created a quality war room and tied bonuses to OTIF. We dangled that carrot like a carrot that had gone to business school. Within quarter 2, OTIF hit 97.6%. Quarter 3, 98.4%. The client doubled orders on schedule. We moved the average days sales outstanding from 74 to 52. Payroll stopped feeling like a cliff and started feeling like a staircase that someone had vacuumed. Dad kept his non-exec board seat and, to his credit, learned to ask a better class of question. He stopped popping into the plant floor to motivate the troops and started reviewing monthly packages, like a person who understands that attention is a resource. He said, I was wrong, only once, softly, in a hallway where numbers hung on the wall in frames. That hallway remembers. Serena went out into the world to get a job that did not live under our roof. The world, blessed, has performance reviews. She flailed in 2 interviews and then got a junior account manager role at a marketing agency where her smile had to carry KPIs on its back. She called me on a Sunday evening and cried because her boss had told her that an influencer deck was a mood board with delusions of grandeur. I told her, that's cruel. It's also, well, do you want me to help you build a better deck? She sniffed and said yes. We rebuilt the brand story for a client together, me on metrics, her on message, like 2 sides of the same coin that had finally been minted. The client signed. Serena texted me a string of crying, laughing emojis, and then, thank you. I didn't know how much I didn't know. Growth looks like that sometimes. Stupid little circles and then a sentence that matters. My mother took 6 months of paid advisory work, per the term sheet, and then gracefully gracefully stepped back. I have garden clubs, she said, which is code for, I miss control but I like flowers. Aunt Linda made a casserole that I actually ate. Q4 closed profitable for the first time in 2 years. Not loud profit, but the kind you put in a savings account and pat twice before turning off the light. We hosted an all-hands where Carmen did the talking, and I stood to the side and clapped first. I handed out retention bonuses with a handshake and a thank you that knew every name. At home, my own apartment, my own furniture, my own quiet, I set boundaries that were not publicized but were enforced. My phone was no longer a leash. My calendar was not a public utility. I met my parents for dinner once a month. If anyone at the table said, you owe, I picked up my purse and left a 20 on the table for the tip and my time. People asked me if this was revenge. It wasn't. Revenge is stabbing a wound and calling it closure. What I wanted was equity. Not in the cap table, though yes, also that, but in the moral accounting of a life. I did not ruin them. I refused to let them ruin me. I offered a deal they would never have offered me. I made them take it. On the 1-year anniversary of the deal closing, we held a board meeting in the same glass room where I'd introduced myself to their denial. This time, the slides were green more often than red. The bank representative smiled without flinching. Adrian dialed in from London and simply said, not bad, which in his dialect is a standing ovation. Priya and I walked out into the parking lot and she bumped my shoulder with hers. You did it, she said. We did it, I corrected. She grinned. And you know what your greatest accomplishment is? Not strangling anyone? Boundaries, she said. You drew them, and you kept them. We celebrated not with champagne, but with sleep. I slept the sleep of a woman who no longer owes her past the interest on a loan it never gave. Epilogue, if you're the kind of reader who likes tidy drawers, Serena sent me a photo the other day of her at a team off-site, hair pulled back, face bare of the armor she used to paint on. She looked good, not glamorous, capable. I got promoted, she wrote. Title is still silly, but I'm managing 2 accounts and a human who is smarter than me. It's terrifying. I think you'd love it. I do, I replied. There's a version of this story where I crushed them. People would cheer. There's a version where I forgave them loudly and turned the other cheek so hard I spun like a ballerina. People would cry. I chose the version where I kept what was mine, gave what I could, and demanded better. Not from them, from me. Fairness is not the same as revenge. Revenge wants the other person to bleed. Fairness wants the bleeding to stop. I did not bring a sword to this story. I brought a term sheet. I signed my name on a line that used to belong to fear, and the ink dried.